the restless mind begins its search. What is it that keeps you awake at night? What is this restless energy that pulls your thoughts in 1,000 directions, even as your body aches for sleep? Tonight, let us walk together on a path that has been tread by seekers for centuries, men and women who, like you, longed for peace, for understanding, for rest that touches not only the body but the very depths of the soul. If you feel called to this journey, I invite you to stay with me, to listen, to breathe, and to let the wisdom of Zen Buddhism gently guide your mind toward quiet. Before we take our first step, if this path resonates with you, please consider supporting this channel with a subscription and sharing your own stories in the comments. Your presence here is part of a larger community of sleepless seekers, and your voice matters. Now, as the night deepens and the world outside falls into shadow, let us begin. There was once a traveler who could not rest. Each night, as darkness fell across the land, he lay awake beneath the stars, his mind consumed by endless thought. Sometimes he worried about the work left undone during the day. Sometimes he fretted about the future, conjuring possible dangers and failures. Sometimes he simply felt a hollow ache, a sense that something was missing, though he could not name what. His body would tire, but his mind raced on. The traveler sought advice. He visited sages, read countless texts, and tried many methods. Some told him to distract himself, to fill his nights with music or stories. Others told him to fight his thoughts, to silence them by force of will. Still others urged him to surrender completely, to accept his sleeplessness as his fate. But none of these approaches brought peace. His nights remained long and filled with restless longing. One evening, as the moon rose over the horizon, casting its silver light across the fields, the traveler met an old monk sitting by a quiet stream. The monk's robe was worn but clean, his posture straight yet relaxed, his gaze soft yet focused. The traveler was drawn to this figure, sensing in him a serenity he had never known. "Master," the traveler said, bowing low, "I have journeyed far seeking peace, but my mind remains a storm. Each night I am beset by worries and thoughts that will not let me rest. Can you show me the way to quiet my mind?" The monk regarded him with kind eyes and said, "Sit with me and listen to the stream." The traveler obeyed. Though he felt restless and uncertain, the stream's gentle murmur filled the silence between them, a sound at once simple and profound. At first, the traveler's mind continued its usual chatter, thinking of the day's events, the road ahead, the discomfort of sitting still. But gradually, as the minutes passed, he noticed the stream's voice more clearly, the gurgle of water over stone, the soft splash of a fish, the whisper of the breeze in the reeds. "Do you hear it?" the monk asked softly. "This stream flows without striving, without resistance. Your mind, too, can flow like this naturally, easily. If you cease trying to force it, you have been searching for peace as though it were a distant treasure. But peace is not elsewhere. Peace is the nature of mind itself, when it is no longer clouded by clinging and aversion." The traveler was puzzled. "But how can I stop clinging? How can I stop my aversion to these thoughts that keep me from sleeping?" The monk smiled and pointed to a leaf floating on the water. "Watch," he said. The leaf drifted with the current, turning gently as it went, sometimes caught in a small eddy, sometimes carried forward with ease. The traveler watched as the leaf made its slow, unhurried way downstream. "Do you see how the leaf does not struggle against the water?" the monk asked. "Your thoughts are like this leaf. Let them come, let them go. Do not chase them, do not fight them. Simply observe and let the mind return to its natural clarity." The traveler sat in silence, watching the leaf, listening to the stream. For a moment, he felt it, the stillness beneath the noise, the spaciousness that holds all thoughts without being disturbed by them. His breath deepened, his body softened. A hint of peace touched his heart. The monk continued, "The Buddha taught, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without bolting. You have been searching in books, in teachers, in practices. These may guide you, but they cannot give you what you already possess. Your true nature is like this stream, clear, flowing, always present. When you stop disturbing it, the water reflects the moon. Night deepened, stars glittered above. The traveler and the monk sat together in silence, the stream's voice filling the space between them. And in that silence, the traveler felt the first stirrings of rest, not the sleep that comes from exhaustion, but the rest that arises when the mind no longer struggles against itself. The monk rose at last. "Your journey begins here," he said. "Return to this stream whenever your mind is troubled, not in the outer world, but in your own heart. Each time you listen without striving, you will come closer to the peace you seek." The traveler bowed low, gratitude filling his chest. He did not know where the road would lead from here, but for the first time in many nights, he felt willing to walk it, not as one fleeing from his thoughts, but as one ready to meet them with gentle curiosity. And so, the restless mind took its first true step toward stillness, guided by the murmur of the stream, the leaves' easy drift, and the quiet wisdom of an old monk beneath the moon's silver light, the empty boat's collision course. As the traveler continued his journey, his heart felt lighter than it had in many moons. The memory of the monk's words and the image of the leaf drifting with the stream's current stayed with him like a quiet companion. Yet, as the days passed and the road lengthened, the storm within his mind began to stir again. Old worries returned, and new ones arose. He found himself once more caught in the tangle of thoughts and emotions, resentments, frustrations, and fears that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. One evening, the traveler came upon a wide, still river. The sun was setting, casting a golden path across the water's surface. A lone boat rested on the shore, and, feeling the pull of the quiet water, he stepped in and began to row. The steady rhythm of the oars, the cool air against his skin, and the fading light brought him a measure of calm. As the boat glided forward, he felt the weight of his thoughts loosen just a little. But then, as he floated in the middle of the river, he saw another boat drifting toward him. At first, he paid it little mind, thinking it would pass by, or that its occupant would steer clear. But the boat kept coming, its course set for a collision. The traveler called out, "Hello, be careful." There was no reply. The boat continued its slow approach, as if it neither saw him nor cared. Annoyance flickered in his chest. He shouted louder, "Watch where you're going. You'll crash into me." Still, no voice answered. The boat drifted nearer, and with it came the traveler's rising anger at the careless boatman, at the disrespect, at the threat to his peace. His grip on the oar tightened, his body tensed, and his heart pounded with indignation. The boats collided with a gentle thud. The traveler spun around, ready to confront the fool who had disturbed his quiet. But when he looked, he saw that the boat was empty. No boatman, no intention, only an abandoned vessel carried by the river's current. The traveler sat stunned. His anger evaporated, leaving behind a hollow feeling of foolishness. The collision had not been a slight, nor an act of carelessness. It was simply the way of things, an empty boat, a flowing river, a chance meeting on the water. In that moment, the traveler recalled a teaching he had once heard but never understood until now. You will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. He saw now how true that was. The boat's impact had been minor, a mere bump on the river, but his own mind had created a tempest, imagining insult, assigning blame, fueling resentment. The suffering had come not from the event, but from the story he had woven around it. He drifted for a time, watching the empty boat float away with the current, and with it went his anger, his tension, his need to be right. In its place arose a quiet wonder at how often in life he had mistaken empty boats for enemies. How often had he filled the actions of others with intentions that did not exist? The friend who forgot to write, the stranger who brushed past without apology, the merchant who spoke too sharply had he not, each time, been like this moment, assigning malice where there was none. As the sky darkened and stars began to bloom, the traveler realized something else. The river carried not just the empty boat, but all things. His boat, the breeze, the moon's reflection, his own thoughts, all were carried on the current of life, moving and shifting without his control. And just as the river bore the empty boat toward him, so too did it bear his anger away. If only he would let it go. He dipped his hand into the cool water and watched the ripples spread outward, mingling with the river's endless flow. Here was the teaching, clear as the moon above him, to see the world as it is, not as the mind imagines it to be, to meet each empty boat with spaciousness, not with stories, to rest, not in struggle, but in the gentle drift of what is. The traveler rowed back to shore, his movements slow and unhurried. His heart was quiet. The river, the boats, the night, they were as they were, and that was enough. When he stepped onto the bank, he whispered to himself, "May I remember the empty boat whenever anger stirs. May I see with clear eyes and let go of the need to fill the world with imagined foes." And so, as the night deepened and the river sang its soft song beneath the stars, the traveler continued on his path, not seeking to rid the world of empty boats, but learning instead to meet them with understanding, with openness, and with peace. The strawberry on the cliff. The road wound higher into the mountains, and the traveler, now humbled by the lesson of the empty boat, moved with greater care and attention. His steps were slower, his breath deeper, his gaze softer. He no longer sought to conquer the path or outpace his thoughts, but instead tried to walk alongside them, as one might walk beside a stream, listening to its murmurs without trying to still its flow. One afternoon, as the sun began its slow descent behind the peaks, casting the world in gold and shadow, the traveler found himself on a narrow trail that clung to the edge of a cliff. Below, the valley spread out in green folds. Above, the sky was a deepening blue, streaked with thin clouds like brushstrokes. The air smelled of pine and stone, fresh and sharp. He paused to rest, leaning against a rock, when a sound shattered the quiet, a roar, low and guttural, rising like thunder from the forest behind him. His heart jumped. He turned and saw, emerging from the trees, a great tiger. Its striped body moved with silent grace, its eyes fixed on him, its muscles coiled for the hunt. The traveler's mind raced. There was no time to think, no plan to devise. His body acted, driven by the instinct to survive. He ran. The path narrowed, the cliff's edge closer now. The tiger's breath sounded behind him, a hot wind of hunger and pursuit. Desperate, the traveler spotted a vine dangling from the rock face and seized it. Without hesitation, he swung himself over the edge, clinging to the vine with trembling hands. The tiger reached the cliff's lip and paced above him, unable to follow, its eyes burning with frustration. But when the traveler dared to look down, his relief vanished. Far below, at the base of the cliff, another tiger waited, its gaze no less fierce, its jaws no less eager. The traveler was suspended between two fates, death above, death below. His heart pounded, his arms ached, his mind filled with fear. And then, in the midst of this terror, his eye caught a glimmer of red, growing from a crevice in the rock. Just within reach was a small wild strawberry. Its fruit was plump and ripe, its color vivid against the gray stone. Without thinking, the traveler reached out, plucked the berry, and placed it in his mouth. The sweetness flooded his senses, the taste rich, the juice cool on his tongue. For a moment, there was no tiger above, no tiger below, no cliff, no danger. There was only the strawberry, its flavor, its perfection, its gift. In that instant, the world fell away, and the traveler was fully, completely present. When the berry was gone, he felt a peace he had never known. The tiger still waited. His peril had not changed, but within him, something had shifted. He understood now the truth of what the old monk had tried to show him by the stream. That peace does not come from the absence of danger, but from the presence of awareness. That joy is not postponed until the tigers are gone, but found in the taste of the strawberry offered in this moment. The traveler hung there between life and death and smiled. The fear was still there, but it no longer ruled him. He knew that whatever came next, he had lived this moment fully. He had tasted the gift that life had placed in his hand, and in doing so, he had touched the freedom that lies beyond fear. The sun dipped lower, the shadows deepened, and the breeze cooled his face. The vine creaked softly with his weight. The tigers waited, But the traveler did not hurry. He stayed a while longer, savoring the last traces of sweetness on his tongue, feeling the roughness of the vine in his grip, hearing the whisper of the wind against the rock. And as he hung there, he reflected on the tigers that had pursued him all his life, the regrets of the past, the anxieties of the future. How often had he been caught between them, suspended in fear, unable to see the strawberries that grew all around him? How often had he missed the sweetness of the present, consumed instead by what was behind or what lay ahead? Now he saw with clarity the tigers would always be there, the past with its pains and mistakes, the future with its uncertainties and threats. They were part of the landscape of existence, but so too were the strawberries, the moments of simple beauty, of joy freely given, if only he would notice. The traveler did not know how he would escape. Perhaps a way would present itself, perhaps not. But for now, he rested in the moment, grateful for the lesson hidden in the heart of danger, for the wisdom of the strawberry that taught him what no teaching, no book, no master's words could convey, that this breath, this taste, this life is enough. The night came, and with it, the stars. The tigers remained, but so did the peace within him. The traveler understood now that each moment offered him a choice, not between tigers and safety, but between fear and presence. And he resolved, as the moon rose and bathed the cliff in silver light, to choose presence again and again. As long as breath remained, the two arrows of pain. The night had passed, and with the dawn came a soft mist that clung to the mountain's edge like a veil, blurring the lines between earth and sky. The traveler, weary but alive, had found his way down from the cliff at first light. The tigers, like so many of his fears, had vanished with the dark. His feet touched solid ground again, and though his body ached, his heart carried the quiet strength that had come from tasting that single, perfect strawberry. He continued along the winding path, the memory of the tigers fresh in his mind, not as terror, but as teachers. And soon, as if drawn by some invisible thread, he came to a clearing where an old monk sat beneath a great tree. The monk's eyes were half closed, his breath slow and steady, his presence as still as the morning air. The traveler approached and bowed deeply. "Master," he said, "I have fled from tigers. I have tasted a strawberry. I have learned that peace is found in presence. But still, pain comes fear, sorrow, the ache of loss, the sharp sting of failure. Is there no way to avoid suffering in this life?" The monk opened his eyes and smiled with warmth. "Sit, traveler, and I will tell you a story the Buddha once shared with his disciples." Beneath trees much like these, the traveler sat, folding his legs beneath him, and listened as the monk began. "Imagine a man walking through the forest," said the monk. "Without warning, an archer hidden among the trees fires an arrow, and it strikes the man in the side. The pain is sharp, immediate, unavoidable. This is the first arrow, the inevitable pains of life, injury, illness, loss, death, disappointment. No one escapes the first arrow. It comes to all who walk the earth." The traveler nodded, for he knew the truth of this. The tigers, the cliffs, the long miles on weary feet. These were first arrows he had already known. But now, the monk continued, his voice gentle as the breeze. Imagine that the wounded man, rather than tending to his injury, begins to curse the archer. He rages against the unfairness of his fate. He blames himself for not seeing the danger sooner. He fears he will never heal. He imagines every worst outcome. And as he does, it is as if he fires a second arrow into his own flesh, one of anger, resistance, and sorrow that deepens his suffering. The traveler closed his eyes and saw himself, in memory, firing these second arrows again and again at the empty boat, at the tigers, at the countless hardships he had met on his path. He saw how he had compounded his pain with his mind's stories, with his clinging to what was lost, his pushing away of what had come. The first arrow is life, the monk said softly. The second arrow is the mind's reaction. And this arrow, traveler, is optional. The clearing grew quiet as the meaning of the tale settled into the traveler's heart. A bird called from a distant tree. The wind stirred the grass at his feet. And in that stillness, he understood. Pain is part of the human journey, but suffering arises from how we meet that pain. The first arrow wounds the body, the second wounds the spirit. But Master, he asked at last, how can I stop myself from firing that second arrow? How can I meet pain without resistance, fear, or anger? The monk reached down and picked up a fallen leaf. He turned it in his fingers, showing the traveler its veins, its fragile edges, its soft color fading with the season. By seeing things as they are, the monk said, by watching your mind, as you watch that leaf on the stream, when pain comes, notice it, name it. Pain is here. When sorrow comes, notice it. Sorrow is here. Do not make it more than it is. Do not let your mind weave stories around it. Stay with the truth of the moment. The traveler breathed, slow and deep, and felt the wisdom of these words. He thought of the vine he had clung to, of the taste of the strawberry, of the empty boat. He saw how each time he had met the world as it was, without stories or resistance, peace had touched him, and each time he had fought what was, he had pierced himself anew. The Buddha taught. The monk continued, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Think that this is the path of mindfulness, to see the first arrow clearly and not add to it, to meet each moment with awareness, not reaction, to tend the wound, not to inflame it with our thoughts. The sun rose higher, burning off the last of the mist. The forest came alive with the sounds of day, birdsong, the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush, the sigh of the wind through the trees. The monk and the traveler sat together in quiet, the lesson resting between them like a shared breath. When at last the traveler stood, his heart felt lighter. He understood now that he could not avoid the arrows of life, but he could choose how to meet them. He could choose to tend his wounds with compassion, to meet his pain with presence, to let go of the second arrows his mind had fired so often and so needlessly. And as he walked on, the path unfolding before him with each step, he resolved to carry this teaching close, to meet what comes with awareness, to let go of the stories, and to rest in the truth of each moment, no more, no less. The mustard seed and shared grief. The path led the traveler down from the mountains into a valley where the earth was rich and fields of rice swayed in the breeze. Villages dotted the landscape, their homes simple and sturdy, their gardens neat. As he walked, the traveler felt a new tenderness for the people he passed. Women tending to children, men repairing thatched roofs, elders sitting quietly in the shade. He saw not just faces, but lives marked by joy and sorrow, hope and loss. First arrows that had surely come to them as they had to him. One afternoon, beneath the broad canopy of a banyan tree, the traveler came upon a woman sitting alone, her face streaked with tears. In her arms she cradled a small bundle, wrapped in cloth with great care and love. When she saw the traveler, she rose and approached him, desperation in her eyes. "Please," she whispered, "can you help me? My child, my only child is dead, but I cannot accept it. I cannot let him go. They say the Buddha is wise beyond all men. Can you guide me to him? Surely he can bring my boy back to life. Or tell me what I must do to save him." The traveler's heart ached at the depth of her grief, remembering the monk's teaching of the 2 arrows. He saw how the first arrow, the loss of her beloved son, had pierced her deeply, but the second arrow, her refusal to accept what had come, her desperate clinging to what could not be restored, kept her in agony. "I will take you to the Buddha," he said gently, "but know that his wisdom may not be what you expect." Together they walked, the woman clutching her child, her steps slow and heavy with sorrow. At last, they came upon a grove where the Buddha sat beneath a great fig tree, surrounded by disciples. His face was calm, his eyes full of compassion, his presence like a still pond reflecting the sky. The woman fell at his feet, laying the bundle before him. "Master," she cried, "I beg you, bring my child back to life. I cannot bear this loss." The Buddha looked upon her with infinite tenderness and spoke softly. "I can help you, dear one, but first bring me a mustard seed from a household that has never known death. When you have found such a seed, I will grant your request." The woman's heart lifted with hope. She rose and hurried from the grove, determined to find what the Buddha had asked for. The traveler watched her go, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what lay ahead. The woman went to the first house she saw and knocked upon the door. "Please," she said, "I need a mustard seed from a home untouched by death." The woman at the door shook her head gently. "My father died last winter," she said. "I am sorry." On she went, to the next house and the next. At each door, the same response. A husband lost to illness, a child taken by fever, a mother gone in her sleep. The woman's hope dimmed with each telling. As the sun fell and the evening stars appeared, she returned to the grove where the Buddha waited, empty-handed but changed. She knelt before him, tears falling freely now, not from denial, but from understanding. "I could not find such a household," she said. "Every family has known loss. Every heart has been broken." The Buddha nodded. "You see now the truth that binds us all. Death comes to all who are born. No one escapes the turning of the wheel. Your grief is not yours alone. It is the grief of the world. But in seeing this, you can begin to lay down your burden, not because your love was wrong, but because clinging to what is gone binds you to suffering. The woman bowed her head, her heart opening to the sorrow of all beings, not just her own. And in that opening, a small measure of peace entered. She stayed with the Buddha's community, learning the way of acceptance, the art of letting go. The traveler, watching all this, felt a quiet shift within himself. He thought of the losses he had carried like stones in his pack, people left behind, dreams that had withered, moments he had longed to preserve. He saw now that his suffering had come not only from the losses themselves, but from his refusal to accept that all things must pass. As he left the grove and continued his journey, the traveler whispered to himself, "Let me walk with this understanding that what I love will change, that what I cherish will one day be gone, and that in accepting this truth, I will find the strength to love more deeply, not less." The valley lay before him, its rivers glinting in the moonlight, its villages resting in the quiet of night. The traveler walked on, his heart lighter, his eyes clearer, his steps gentler upon the earth, knowing that in every face he met, he would see a fellow soul acquainted with loss, and with that knowledge, he would greet them with compassion. The farmer's maybe wisdom. The valley path led the traveler into a quiet village, nestled among fields of rice and tea. The homes were modest, their walls weathered by wind and rain, but the air was rich with the scent of tilled earth and flowering plum trees. Here, life moved at the rhythm of the seasons, the planting, the harvest, the rains that fed the soil, the sun that ripened the crops. As the traveler passed through, he came upon an old farmer standing at the edge of his field, gazing out across the land. The farmer's face was lined with age, but his eyes were steady, reflecting the sky above and the earth below. Beside him stood neighbors, their voices low with sympathy. The traveler, curious, approached and bowed in greeting. "What has happened here?" he asked gently. One of the neighbors replied, "The farmer's only horse has run away. It broke through the gate last night and fled into the hills. How will he plow his fields now? This is surely a great misfortune." The traveler turned to the farmer, expecting to see grief or frustration, but the old man simply shrugged and said, "Maybe." The traveler was puzzled. Surely the loss of a horse was a calamity for a man whose livelihood depended on it. Yet the farmer showed no sign of despair or anger. He only returned his gaze to the horizon, as if watching for something the others could not see. Days passed, and the traveler remained in the village, helping where he could. Then, one morning, news spread quickly. The farmer's horse had returned, and not alone it had brought with it a small herd of wild horses from the hills. The neighbors gathered at the farmer's home, their faces bright with excitement. "What incredible luck!" they exclaimed. "Your horse has come back, and now you have many more besides. How fortunate you are." But the farmer only smiled and said, "Maybe." Again the traveler marveled at the old man's calm. Others would have celebrated, made plans for wealth, boasted of their fortune, but the farmer accepted the change as easily as he had accepted the loss. Soon after, the farmer's son set about taming one of the wild horses, but the animal, fierce and unbroken, threw the boy violently to the ground. His leg shattered, leaving him unable to work the fields. Once more, the neighbors came with heavy hearts. "What terrible luck," they said. "Now your son is injured and cannot help you. This is a true disaster." And as before, the farmer said, "Maybe." The traveler began to see the pattern, though its meaning was not yet clear to him. He stayed on, helping the family with small tasks as the son healed. Weeks later, soldiers arrived in the village. A war had begun, and they came to take all able-bodied young men to fight. Many sons were taken, and the cries of mothers filled the air as they watched their children led away. But because of his broken leg, the farmer's son was left behind. Once again, the neighbors came, their faces a mixture of sorrow for themselves and wonder at the farmer's fortune. "What good luck you have," they said. "Your son has been spared." And the farmer replied, "Maybe." The traveler, hearing this, felt something shift within him, a loosening of the tight knot of judgments he so often carried. He realized how quick he had been in his life to name events as good or bad, fortunate or unfortunate. And yet, how often had he been wrong? How often had what seemed a gift turned to ash? How often had sorrow opened the door to unexpected blessings? That night, he sat with the farmer beneath the stars. "Teach me, wise one," the traveler said softly. "How do you remain so steady when all around you rush to judge what happens?" The farmer looked at him, the moonlight soft upon his face. "When I was young," he said, "I too called things good or bad, lucky or unlucky. I rode the waves of joy and despair, up and down, high and low. But over time, I saw how one follows the other, how the story unfolds beyond what we can see in any single moment. Now, I let life be what it is. I do what I can, but I no longer cling to my opinions of how things should be." He paused, listening to the night. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering, and judgment is a form of attachment to how we wish the world to be rather than how it is. Let go of that, and you will find peace. The traveler bowed low, gratitude filling his heart. He saw now that the path to peace was not in controlling what came his way, but in meeting it with openness, in saying maybe to the turns of fortune, trusting that the full story was always still unfolding. When morning came, the traveler took his leave, the old farmer's words like a lantern to light his way. As he walked, he whispered to himself, maybe, let me meet whatever comes with this gentle word, and in it find the freedom of the one who judges not, but simply lives. The wind rose, carrying the scent of earth and rain, and the traveler walked on, his heart lighter with each step, his mind quiet as the fields at dawn. The gift of anger declined. The road led the traveler beyond the valley, through forests where sunlight dabbled the earth and streams sang their clear, cool songs. His steps were unhurried now, his mind quieter than it had once been. He walked with a sense of ease, no longer seeking to force answers from the world, but allowing the journey itself to reveal what he needed to learn. One afternoon, as he rested beneath a tree by the roadside, a stranger appeared, a man with clenched fists and eyes hard with fury. The man's face was flushed, his breath quick with anger. Without word or warning, he began to hurl insults at the traveler. "You wanderer," he spat. "You think yourself wise, but you're nothing but a beggar in rags. A fool who has wasted his life on empty paths." The traveler remained seated, watching the man with steady eyes, his breath calm, his heart undisturbed. He felt the heat of the man's anger, but it did not ignite a flame within him. The man's voice rose, his insults sharpened. "Are you deaf, or simply too proud to respond? Do you think yourself better than me, that you won't even defend yourself?" The traveler spoke at last, his voice gentle as the wind. "Friend, may I ask you a question?" The man hesitated, thrown off balance by the traveler's serenity. "What question?" he snapped. "If a person offers you a gift," the traveler said, "and you choose not to accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man frowned, confused. It would still belong to the one who offered it. "Of course." The traveler inclined his head. Then, "Kind sir, I decline your gift of anger. You may keep it if you wish, but I will not take it into my heart." The man stood in stunned silence. His fury, which had seemed so powerful a moment ago, now felt like a heavy burden he alone must bear. The traveler's peace had made it clear. His anger harmed no one but himself. The stranger's hands dropped to his sides. His breath slowed. The hard set of his jaw softened. "I don't understand," he said quietly. "Why do you not fight back? Why do you not defend your honor?" The traveler smiled. "There is nothing to defend. Honor is not harmed by the words of another. It is harmed only by our own actions, our own choices. I choose peace." The man sank to the ground. His rage dissolved into bewilderment and shame. "Teach me," he said at last, "and how do I let go of this fire that consumes me?" The traveler looked upon him with kindness. The Buddha taught that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent to throw it at another. You are the one who is burned. Let go of the coal. Let go of the anger. Return to your breath. Return to the present. Each moment offers a new choice. Together, they sat in silence. The stranger felt his anger ebb away, like a tide retreating from the shore. His chest no longer burned. His mind grew clear. He realized that in all his life, his anger had never brought him the peace he craved. It had only deepened his suffering. As evening fell, the man rose, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He bowed to the traveler. "Thank you," he said simply, and with that, he walked away, leaving his anger behind like a discarded weight. The traveler remained beneath the tree, watching as the sky deepened into dusk. He reflected on how often in his own life he had accepted the gifts of others' anger, how often he had let them disturb his peace, set fire to his thoughts, and poison his heart. But now he understood. He had always had a choice. Just as he could choose not to grasp a hot coal, he could choose not to take the gift of anger offered by another. The wind stirred the leaves above him. The first stars appeared, shy in the twilight. The traveler felt a quiet joy, not the joy of victory over another, but the joy of victory over himself. He had learned to meet anger not with anger, but with stillness, with compassion, with wisdom. As he rose to continue his journey, he whispered to the night. May I remember this, that what is offered need not be received. May I meet the anger of others with the kindness they have forgotten, and so help them remember their own peace. And so he walked on, the path before him open and free, his heart unburdened, his spirit light as the breeze that carried him forward into the deepening night, the already broken teacup. The traveler's journey led him into the highlands, where stone paths wound through villages built upon terraces carved from the mountainside. Here the air was thin and clear, and the world seemed nearer to the sky. As he walked, he came upon a small monastery perched on a cliff, its wooden beams weathered by wind and sun, its garden neat with care. The abbot of this monastery was known as a man of great wisdom, and the traveler, eager to rest and learn, sought his counsel. He was welcomed with kindness and invited to join the monks for tea in a simple hall that opened onto a view of endless sky and distant peaks. The abbot poured the tea himself. His hands were steady, his movements deliberate, as if each gesture was a prayer. He placed before the traveler a small clay cup, humble in form, earthy in color, a vessel of quiet beauty. The traveler lifted the cup and admired its simple grace. "Master," he said, "there is something peaceful in this cup. It reminds me of the stillness I seek in my own heart." The abbot smiled. "Yes, it is a good cup, and in my mind, it is already broken." The traveler looked up, puzzled. "Broken? But master, the cup is whole. There is no crack, no flaw. Why do you say it is broken?" The abbot's gaze rested upon the cup, soft with affection. "Because one day it will be. Perhaps it will slip from my hand. Perhaps it will fall when an earthquake shakes these walls. Perhaps it will simply wear away with time. The form you see now is only a moment in its life. When I drink from it, I do so with full appreciation, knowing that its time is brief. In this way, I love it deeply, without clinging." The traveler sat in silence, contemplating the abbot's words. He realized how often he had grieved the breaking of cups, the fading of beauty, the loss of what he cherished, not because these losses were unnatural, but because he had not accepted their certainty. He had clung to the illusion that what he loved might last forever, and in that clinging, he had planted the seeds of his own sorrow. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things are impermanent. The abbot continued, "When we see this with clear eyes, we are not disheartened. We are free to love more deeply, more wisely. We treasure the cup, the friend, the moment, not because we can keep them, but because we cannot." The tea cooled in the traveler's hand as he listened, his heart turning over this truth. He saw his life like the cup, each breath, each day, a fragile vessel, beautiful because it was fleeting. He saw his attachments, his resistance to change, his sorrow at the passing of things, all as the grasping of one who forgets the nature of clay and time. "Master," he said at last, "how do I practice this way of seeing? How do I let go of my longing to make what I love endure?" The abbot gestured to the garden beyond the hall, where a single plum blossom trembled on the breeze. By returning again and again to this moment, by seeing what is here now, by opening your hand rather than closing it, The broken cup is not a cause for despair. It is an invitation to presence, to gratitude, to a love that does not bind. The traveler drank his tea slowly, tasting it as if for the first and last time. The warmth filled him. The fragrance rose to his nose. The cup's rim touched his lips, cool and smooth, and he thought, "This is enough. This moment is enough." When the tea was gone, the traveler set the cup down gently, as one sets down something precious. He bowed to the abbot. "Thank you for showing me how to hold the cup of life with open hands." The abbot nodded. "And may you remember, when the cup does break, that it was always so. In that remembrance lies peace." As the traveler left the monastery and continued his journey, the wind lifted through the pines, and the sky stretched wide above him. He whispered to himself, "Let me see all things as already broken, though I may love them fully while they are here. Let me release the illusion of forever, and in doing so, find the freedom to live now." The mountains received his words in silence, and the traveler walked on, lightened by the wisdom of the broken cup, the robe of true generosity. The mountain path descended into a fertile valley, where fields of golden grain rippled in the breeze, and villages thrived along a winding river. The traveler's feet, worn from miles of stone and dust, found comfort in the softness of the grassy trail. His mind, too, felt softened like the soil of the valley, receptive to whatever seed wisdom might fall upon it next. One morning, as he neared a bustling town, he saw a great gathering at its edge. People stood beneath a flowering tree, whispering with wonder and respect. At the center of the crowd stood the Buddha himself, seated in serene composure, offering teachings to all who wished to listen. Among those who had gathered was a wealthy merchant, richly dressed, his robes bright with color, and his fingers adorned with rings of gold and jade. The merchant stepped forward, bowing deeply before the Buddha. From beneath his outer cloak, he produced a robe of exquisite craftsmanship, woven from the finest silk, embroidered with threads of silver, shimmering in the morning light. "Lord Buddha," said the merchant, his voice loud so that all might hear, "please accept this humble gift as a token of my reverence for your wisdom and compassion." His words rang with pride, his face alight with the anticipation of admiration from the crowd. The Buddha gazed at the robe, then at the merchant, his expression kind but thoughtful. "Your offering is generous in intention," he said softly. "But tell me, merchant, do I lack for robes?" The merchant hesitated, glancing at the Buddha's simple garment, well worn but clean. "No, Lord," he admitted, "you do not." "Then I ask you," the Buddha continued, "if you truly wish to honor me, take this robe and offer it to someone who has none. Find one who is cold, who shivers in the night, who hides in rags. Give where the gift is most needed, and you will bring true joy to them, to yourself, and to the world." The merchant stood in silence, the pride draining from his face, replaced by reflection. He saw in that moment that his offering had been less about meeting a need and more about seeking recognition. He bowed again, humbled. "As you say, Lord, I will do as you counsel." The merchant turned from the Buddha and walked through the town. He passed noblemen and merchants like himself, And then he came upon a beggar at the edge of the marketplace. The man's clothes were threadbare. His skin was roughened by the wind. His eyes, when they met the merchant's, held no expectation, only the weariness of long hunger and cold. Without a word, the merchant removed the fine robe from his arms and draped it over the beggar's shoulders. The beggar gasped, tears rising in his eyes as warmth and dignity wrapped around him like the morning sun. "Bless you," he whispered. "Bless you for seeing me." The merchant felt a warmth then, deeper and truer than the pride he had felt when he first offered the robe to the Buddhas. It was a warmth that asked for no witness, no praise, only the quiet joy of having lessened another suffering. When he returned to the Buddha, the merchant bowed once more. "Lord," he said simply, "thank you for showing me the true path of generosity." The Buddha smiled. Generosity is not in the value of the gift, nor in the esteem it brings. It is in the heart that gives without seeking reward, without seeking to elevate itself. That is the generosity that frees both giver and receiver. The traveler, watching all this from the edge of the crowd, felt these words settle within him like seeds in fertile earth. He saw how often in his own life he had given with mixed motives, seeking approval, seeking to prove his goodness, seeking to soothe his own unease. And he saw, too, how the purest giving, like the merchant's final act, asked nothing in return. As the people dispersed, the traveler remained, seated beneath the flowering tree. He reflected on how the Buddha had no need for silk robes, for jewels, for riches. His wealth was in the clarity of his mind, in the boundlessness of his compassion. The traveler understood that true wealth lay not in what one possessed, but in what one was willing to share without clinging. When at last he rose to continue his journey, he whispered to the breeze, "Let me give as the Buddha teaches, not to uplift myself, but to ease the burdens of others. Let me see where my offering is most needed, and give there with an open heart." The river flowed beside him as he walked, its waters carrying leaves and petals toward the distant sea. The traveler felt as light as one of those petals, borne onward by the current of compassion that now guided his steps. The two monks and the river crossing. The traveler's path followed the river's curve, its waters glinting beneath the midday sun. The road grew muddy from recent rains, and at times the traveler's feet sank deep, each step a slow pull through earth softened by the storm. He moved carefully, mindful not to slip, but also mindful of his thoughts, how they, too, sometimes became mired in old patterns, pulling him down into unnecessary struggle. It was along this sodden way that the traveler encountered two monks journeying together. One was elderly, his face lined not only by age, but by years of quiet contemplation. The other was young, his eyes bright with devotion, but clouded at times by the rigidity of newly learned discipline. As they walked, the group rounded a bend and came upon a wide, swollen stream that blocked their way. At its edge stood a woman, beautifully dressed, her silken robe gathered high, her expression troubled. The current, swift and brown with rain, threatened to ruin her garments, or worse, should she try to cross alone. Seeing her distress, the elder monk stepped forward without hesitation. He bowed to the woman, then lifted her gently into his arms and carried her across the stream. His feet found firm ground, his stride steady despite the weight he bore. On the far bank, he set her down. She bowed low, murmuring thanks, and continued on her way. The younger monk followed across the stream, but his brow was furrowed, his steps heavy not from mud, but from the burden of his thoughts. For hours they walked in silence, the elder monk at ease, the younger consumed by the scene he had witnessed. At last, unable to contain himself, the younger monk spoke. "Master," he burst out, "how could you do such a thing? We have taken vows to avoid contact with women, especially the young and beautiful, and yet you lifted her, carried her across, touched her without hesitation. This goes against everything we have been taught." The elder monk turned to his companion, his face calm as the river now flowing more gently beside them. "Brother," he said, "I set her down on the riverbank hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" The traveler, who had walked nearby, felt the words strike him as surely as if he had been the one addressed. He saw, in a flash, how often he too had carried burdens long after they had ceased to exist in the world. An unkind word, a disappointment, a moment of embarrassment or regret. He saw how these memories, these judgments, clung to him like heavy stones, weighing him down. Though their cause was long past, the younger monk, hearing his master's reply, fell silent, the grip of his judgment loosening at last. He saw how the elder had acted not from desire or attachment, but from compassion. He had responded to the need of the moment, then let go, untroubled by the act. Once it was done, the traveler reflected on the lesson as they walked on. He thought of all the moments he had failed to lay his burdens down, the imagined slights, the past failures, the fears of what others might think. He realized that these were like the woman at the river events that had come and gone, but which he continued to carry long after they had passed. As evening approached and the monks took their leave to seek shelter for the night, the traveler sat by the water's edge, watching the river flow. He thought, the water does not hold on. It carries what comes, then lets it go. It does not cling to the leaves, the branches, the petals that fall upon its surface. It bears them along, then releases them to the sea. He took a deep breath, the cool air filling his lungs, and with his exhale, he imagined releasing all that he had carried unnecessarily, the anger, the shame, the old wounds. He saw them float upon the river, borne away by the current, until they were no longer visible, no longer his to hold. That night, beneath a sky blossoming with stars, the traveler whispered to himself, "Let me be like the elder monk. Let me act with compassion where compassion is needed, and then set the moment down. Let me carry nothing that is no longer mine to bear." The river sang its endless song, a hymn of letting go, and the traveler slept, unburdened, upon its banks. The crickets sang in silence. The traveler awoke at dawn, the river's song still weaving through his dreams, its rhythm a quiet reminder to let go, to flow, to move on. His heart felt lighter than it had in many moons. as if the very act of setting down those invisible burdens had made his steps surer, his breath deeper. He continued his journey, following the river until it led him into a great city, a place of noise and movement, where merchants cried their wares, children laughed and shouted in play, and the hammer of craftsmen rang through the streets. In the heart of the city stood an ancient temple, its golden roof shining in the morning sun, its walls worn smooth by centuries of devotion. The traveler entered, seeking refuge from the clamor of the city, and found within its walls a stillness that seemed to breathe with the stones themselves. He sat in the temple's great hall, where incense drifted like mist, and the light fell in soft beams from high windows. The quiet wrapped around him like a cloak, and he closed his eyes, letting the silence seep into his bones. Yet even in that stillness, the traveler's mind began to stir. Beneath the silence of the hall, he heard the distant noise of the city, the rumble of carts on stone, the murmur of voices beyond the temple gates, and beneath that, subtler still, he became aware of a delicate, rhythmic sound, a faint, high song that seemed to come from the very wood of the building itself. Curious, the traveler opened his eyes and listened with all his being. He rose and followed the sound, drawn through corridors and across worn floors, until at last he found its source. A tiny cricket nestled in a crack in one of the temple's ancient pillars, its body small, its song steady and sure. The traveler marveled. How could such a small creature be heard within so vast a space? How could its voice carry through the silence? When the city's louder sounds faded away at the temple's edge, an old monk sweeping the temple floor noticed the traveler's wonder and came to stand beside him. The traveler turned and asked, "Venerable one, how is it that this cricket's song can be heard in a place so grand, amidst all the noise that surrounds it?" The monk smiled, setting down his broom. He reached into his robe and drew out a single copper coin. With a small gesture, he let it fall to the stone floor. The coin rang out with a clear, sharp sound, and at once heads turned throughout the temple, visitors, worshippers, and monks alike, pausing to see where the sound had come from. The old monk's eyes twinkled. "People hear what they are listening for," he said. "The cricket's song is no louder than the coin's, but few are listening for its voice. The coin speaks a language the world has been trained to hear, the language of gain and loss, of wealth and need. The cricket speaks the language of the quiet world, the world beneath striving, beneath noise, the world of the present moment. To hear it, one must first quiet the noise within." The traveler stood in silence, absorbing this truth. He saw how often his own ears had been attuned to the clamor of the world, the praise and blame, the success and failure, the endless din of wanting and fearing, and he realized how rarely he had listened for the subtle voices, the crickets of his own life, the gentle wisdom of breath, the small beauties of the day, the quiet teachings that arrive when the mind is still. Together, the monk and the traveler sat near the pillar, and the cricket's song filled the space between them, no longer faint, no longer hidden. The sound seemed now to ring as clear as the bell at the temple's gate. The monk spoke once more, true silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of attention. When the mind grows quiet, the world reveals its true music, not in the clang of coins, but in the song of crickets, the sigh of the wind, the rustle of a leaf. These are the voices that teach us peace, if we have ears to hear them. As the sun climbed higher, casting light across the temple's worn floor, the traveler felt his own inner noise begin to fade. The judgments, the plans, the ceaseless narration of the mind. In its place grew a simple awareness, a listening beyond words. And in that listening, he heard the world anew, not only the cricket, but the breath of the earth, the heartbeat of the present moment. When at last he arose to continue his journey, he bowed low to the old monk. "You have taught me to listen," he said, "not only with my ears, but with my whole being. May I remember this, and in remembering, find the silence that holds all wisdom." The monk returned his bow. "Go with quiet heart, traveler. The cricket's song is always there. The task is only to hear it." And so the traveler departed, the city's clamor falling behind him, the cricket's song still echoing softly in the chamber of his heart, the mirror beneath the dust. The traveler left the city behind, his ears attuned now to subtler sounds, the whisper of the wind through grass, the hush of his own breath, the quiet pulse of life unfolding in each step. The cricket's song lingered in his awareness, a reminder that beneath the world's noise, there was always something finer waiting to be heard. His mind, though often tempted by old habits of worry or longing, returned more easily now to the present, to the simple miracle of each moment. In time, his journey brought him to a remote monastery built against the side of a mountain, where the walls were worn smooth by centuries of rain and sun, and moss grew thick along the stones. The monastery was quiet, its few monks tending to their duties with care but without hurry. The traveler asked to speak with the master, hoping for further guidance on his path. The master welcomed him with warmth and led him through the monastery to a storage room rarely entered. It smelled of old wood and incense, long faded. In the corner stood a tall mirror, so coated in dust and grime that it reflected nothing but shadows. "Tell me, traveler," the master said, his voice soft, "what do you see?" The traveler stepped closer, peering at the mirror's darkened surface. "I see only dust," he replied. "The mirror shows nothing at all." The master smiled. "And was the mirror made by the dust?" "No," the traveler said. "The dust merely covers it." The master handed him a soft cloth. "Then clean it." Day after day, the traveler worked in the quiet room. The dust, thick from years of neglect, clung stubbornly to the glass. He wiped gently at first, then with greater care and persistence, his movements slow and deliberate. As he worked, he thought of the many ways his mind, too, had been covered by dust, the dust of old beliefs, of fear, of clinging and aversion, of endless stories spun by thought. Bit by bit, the surface of the mirror began to emerge. A patch of clarity here, a faint gleam there. As the grime fell away, light returned to the glass, until at last it shone again, reflecting the world as it was. The beams of the ceiling, the worn floorboards, the face of the traveler himself, When the task was done, the master returned. Together they gazed at the restored mirror, now bright with its natural luster. The master asked, "Did your effort create this clarity?" The traveler shook his head. "No, master. The clarity was always there. I only removed what had hidden it." The master nodded. "And so it is with your true nature, your mind's clarity, your heart's wisdom, your capacity for peace. They have always been present. The dust is your attachments, your delusions, your fears. Your practice is not to create what is pure, but to clear away what conceals it." The traveler felt a deep stillness as the master spoke, as if the words themselves were wiping clean some inner surface long clouded. He saw that his efforts to find peace, to seek wisdom, had often been like trying to polish the dust rather than remove it. Now he understood. He needed only to clear the obscurations gently, patiently, faithfully. "But master," he asked, "the dust returns, even as I clean the mirror, more settled upon it. How can I keep the mirror clear?" The master smiled. "By noticing the dust as it falls, by tending the mirror each day, not in haste, not in anger, but with care and love. Dust will come, traveler. That is the nature of the world, but it need not stay. The same cloth that cleared it before will serve you again." The traveler bowed deeply. "And what is this cloth, master?" "The cloth is your awareness," the master replied, "soft and steady. When you meet each thought, each feeling, each habit with this awareness, the dust lifts. The mirror reveals what has always been, your original face, before the world taught you to forget it." The traveler left the room where the mirror stood, but the lesson walked beside him. He felt as if his heart, too, was being gently polished with each breath. The weight of old thoughts seemed lighter, the need to cling to them less pressing. As he resumed his journey down the mountain, he whispered to himself, "Let me tend the mirror of my mind each day. Let me see the dust without shame and clear it without haste. Let me remember that clarity is not a prize to be earned, but a truth to be revealed." The mountain winds answered with their soft song, and the traveler walked on, the path bright before him, as if lit by the very mirror he had cleaned, the finger pointing to the moon. The traveler descended from the mountain monastery, his heart brightened by the lesson of the mirror's clarity. Each step felt lighter now, as though the very act of seeing clearly, even for a moment, had lifted a great burden from his back. Yet, as the valley opened before him, he knew that clarity, like the polished mirror, required gentle tending each day. The dust of the world would settle again, and it would be his task to meet it with awareness, not to resent its return. He soon came upon a quiet village where word had spread that a renowned Zen master was passing through. The villagers gathered in a field at dusk, where the master agreed to share a teaching beneath the wide, open sky. The traveler, curious and eager to listen, joined them, sitting near the back, where the grasses swayed like a sea in the evening breeze. The master stood without ornament or grandeur. His robe was plain, his staff worn smooth by years of walking. He raised one hand and pointed to the full moon, rising now above the hills, its light silvering the world below. "Look," the master said simply. His voice was soft, but it carried across the field like the call of a night bird. The moon. The villagers gazed upward. The moon hung low and luminous, round as a perfect pearl. For a time, all were silent, bathed in its glow. Then the master lowered his hand and smiled. "Do not mistake my finger for the moon," he said. "The teachings are like this finger. They point, but they are not what they point toward. The words, the sutras, the practices, the rituals, they are fingers pointing at the moon. If you stare only at the finger, you will never see the moon's light." The traveler felt the truth of these words like a bell ringing softly in his chest. He thought of how long he had studied, how many teachings he had gathered, like pebbles in a pouch, each precious, each examined, each turned over and over in his mind. And yet, how often had he become so focused on the words, the ideas, that he had failed to look where they pointed? A young man seated nearby raised his hand. "Master," he asked, "if the teachings are but a finger, should we not abandon them altogether?" The master shook his head gently. "The finger is necessary, for it helps those who have forgotten to look at the sky. But once the moon is seen, one no longer needs to cling to the finger. One does not despise the finger, nor discard it with disdain. One simply stops mistaking it for the thing it reveals." Another villager spoke up, hesitant. "But how can we be sure we are seeing the moon, and not just another finger?" The master's eyes twinkled. "When the moon's light touches you, you will know it, not through thought, not through analysis, but through direct seeing. The moon's light warms the heart, clarifies the mind, and quiets all questioning. It is beyond the reach of words, yet nearer than breath." The villagers sat in quiet wonder, the moon's radiance reflected in their faces. The traveler, too, gazed at the moon, and for the first time he saw not a symbol, not a lesson, not a teaching, but simply the moon, round and full, shining in the vastness of the night. He understood then how often he had clung to words as if they were the thing itself, how he had studied the map so intently that he had forgotten to walk the path, how he had examined the signpost so long that he had delayed reaching the destination. When the gathering ended and the villagers returned to their homes, the traveler remained seated in the field. The grass whispered around him, the moon climbed higher, bathing the land in silver. He felt no need for further teaching, no hunger for more words. The moon's light was enough. He whispered to himself, "Let me honor the finger, but let me not mistake it for the moon. Let me see where the teachings point and walk there with my own feet. Let me stop searching for the light in words and look up, look out, look within, and see it shining everywhere." The wind rose softly, as if in answer. The traveler stood, his shadow long on the silvered ground, and continued on his way, the moon lighting his path, needing no more guidance than its quiet glow. Choosing the boat that crosses, the traveler's path led him down from the moonlit hills into a lowland of rivers and marshes, where waterways crisscrossed the land like threads of silver in the morning light. Villages clung to the riverbanks, their homes built on stilts, their lives shaped by the ebb and flow of water. The traveler saw boats of every kind gliding along the channels, some simple and rough, carved from single logs, others graceful with painted sails, others wide and sturdy, bearing heavy loads of grain or timber. One afternoon, the traveler came upon a young seeker sitting on a river bank, his brow furrowed with worry. A small fleet of boats was moored nearby, and the seeker stared at them as if they held the answers to all his troubles or none at all. The traveler approached gently. "Friend, you seem troubled. What weighs upon your heart?" The seeker looked up, his eyes tired with indecision. "I have come here seeking the right boat," he said. "I have studied many paths, many teachings. Some speak of effort and discipline, others of surrender and grace. Some urge ritual and form, others teach formlessness. Each claims to be the true way, but I am paralyzed. How can I choose the right boat to cross the waters of this life?" The traveler sat beside him, gazing at the boats bobbing on the gentle current. After a moment, he asked, "Where do you wish to go?" The seeker blinked. "To the far shore," he said. "To wisdom, to freedom from suffering, to peace. Then, the right boat is the one that carries you across." The traveler replied simply, "There is no universal boat that suits all travelers or all waters. The fisherman's skiff would fail in open sea. The cargo barge would founder in a narrow stream. The choice depends not on the boat's fame, nor on the praises sung of it by others, but on whether it serves your crossing." The seeker considered this. "But how will I know which boat will carry me? What if I choose wrong and am lost?" The traveler smiled gently. "You will not know by standing on the shore, friend. Boats are tested in the water. Choose with sincerity. Step aboard and see how it moves beneath you. If it serves, give yourself to the crossing. If not, return to shore and seek again. The danger lies not in choosing imperfectly, but in refusing to step onto any boat at all." The seeker lowered his gaze to the boats. He saw now that each bore marks of journeys, past scratches on wood, patches on sails, ropes worn smooth by use. None was perfect, but each had served the traveler before him. Each had made a crossing, and when I reached the far shore, the seeker asked quietly, "What then?" The traveler's eyes softened. "Then you leave the boat behind. You do not carry it upon your back. The boat is a means, not the goal. Cling to it beyond its purpose, and it becomes a burden." The seeker breathed deeply, the knot of his indecision beginning to loosen. "I have been so caught up in finding the perfect way that I have not taken a single step upon it." The traveler nodded. The Buddha taught that the Dharma is like a raft, a vessel for crossing, not an object of worship. The teachings are fingers pointing to the moon, boats pointing to the shore. Honor them, use them, but do not mistake them for the destination. A breeze stirred the river's surface, and the boats rocked gently. The seeker rose, his mind clearer than it had been in many days. He bowed to the traveler. "Thank you," he said. "I will choose a boat and trust the journey to teach me the rest." The traveler watched as the young man stepped toward one of the vessels, a simple skiff, well used but sound. He saw him test the ropes, steady his foot upon the plank, and begin to push away from the bank. As the boat moved out upon the river, the traveler whispered to himself, "Let me, too, remember? The right path is the one that helps me cross. Let me honor the teachings that serve and release those that do not. Let me not confuse the boat with the shore, nor cling to the means beyond their purpose. The sun slipped toward the horizon, and the river gleamed like polished silver. The traveler turned from the water's edge and continued along the bank, the sound of oars dipping into the current behind him, steady and sure. The sacred mountain realized here. The river carried the traveler onward, its voice now familiar, a teacher of flow, of letting go, of trust in the unfolding journey. His feet followed its bends and crossings until the land rose again, and he found himself at the base of a great mountain, its peak hidden in mist. The villagers at its foot spoke in hushed tones of a master who dwelled near the summit, a hermit of vast wisdom who had withdrawn from the world to live close to the sky. Drawn by the old longing, the longing that had begun his journey, the traveler resolved to climb. His heart whispered, "Perhaps here, at last, I will find the final answer. Perhaps here, the path will end in perfect clarity." The way was steep and stony. The air thinned as he rose, and each step became an act of will. The mountain tested him with thorned shrubs that tore at his robe, with loose stones that sent him sliding, with winds that chilled him to the bone. Yet he pressed on, driven by the hope that at the summit some final truth awaited, some secret that would still his heart forever, banish his doubts, erase all trace of suffering. At last, after many days, he reached a small clearing where a simple hut stood, built of stone and wood, its roof thatched with reeds. An old man sat before it, tending a small fire, his face lined but luminous, his posture both strong and relaxed. The master raised his eyes as the traveler approached, and his gaze was like the mountain itself, vast, steady, unmoving. The traveler bowed low. "Master," he said, his voice thick with exhaustion and longing, "I have climbed to your dwelling, seeking the truth that will free me. I have followed rivers, crossed valleys, polished the mirror of my mind, listened for the cricket's song, chosen the boat that crosses. But still, peace escapes me. Tell me what is the final secret, the ultimate wisdom, that I may at last rest." The master regarded him with kindness. "Tell me," he said, "what did you see as you climbed this mountain?" The traveler blinked, surprised. "I saw rocks, thorns, and the path itself. I saw the sky grow closer, the valleys fall away. I saw the hardship of the climb." "And did you see the small flowers that grow between the stones?" the master asked. "Did you hear the wind's song through the pines? Did you notice how the clouds cast shadows on the valley below?" The traveler faltered. I was so focused on reaching you, Master, that I did not truly see these things." The master gestured to the view beyond the clearing, where the mountain slopes fell away into endless green and blue. "What you sought on this mountain has always been at your feet, in the flower by the path, in the sound of your own breath, in the step you take right now. The truth you desire is not hidden on some distant peak. It is here. It has been here all along." The traveler's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of release. He saw it now. The sacred mountain was not this place of stone and sky. The sacred mountain was every step he had taken, every moment he had lived, every breath he had drawn. There was no higher peak to reach, no final wisdom beyond what the present moment offered. The master continued softly. You climbed this mountain because you believed peace was elsewhere. Sometimes we must climb, not because the truth is far, but because we believe it is. The climb exhausts that belief until we see that we have carried the treasure with us all along. They sat together in silence, the traveler and the master, as the sun began to set, painting the world in gold and rose. No further teaching was needed. The mountain spoke with its stillness, the wind with its song, the earth with its quiet strength. When at last the traveler rose to begin his descent, he bowed deeply. Thank you, Master, for showing me what was always here. Go well, the Master said, and remember, the sacred mountain is not a place. It is your life. Seen with open eyes, the traveler made his way down as night gathered. Each step felt light, as if the mountain itself had taken the weight from his shoulders. He stopped often, not to seek, but to see. A wildflower glowing in the dusk, a bird's call echoing through the trees, the cool touch of wind upon his cheek, and as he walked, he whispered to the night, let me remember that what I seek is not ahead of me, nor behind me, nor above me. It is here, in this breath, in this step, in this moment. The stars rose, silent and ancient, and the traveler walked on, no longer seeking the sacred mountain, but walking it with every step. The journey we have shared has brought us through valleys and over peaks, across rivers and fields, into temples and silent places within. We have met empty boats and sweet strawberries, angry men and humble monks, polished mirrors and crickets singing in hidden cracks. Each story pointed not to some distant wisdom, but to the truth shining quietly within the life we live each day. The sacred mountain is here. Wherever we stand, the moon is here. Whenever we look with clear eyes. And so, dear listener, as you rest tonight, may these stories be not endings, but invitations. Invitations to notice the breath that moves in and out, the weight of your body upon the bed, the softness of this moment. May you remember, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. And may you carry these ancient teachings gently as reminders that the wisdom you long for has been with you all along. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Share your own stories and subscribe if these words have brought you comfort. Good night, dear one. May your sleep be deep and your dreams kind.